Alrighty, guys and girls. So let's just start it off at the very beginning here. I'm not doing this as a means to debate the chat, okay? This is my tier list. I'm sure you have your own, and that's fine. So if I put something here that you don't agree with, cool. So with that being said, let's begin right here at the very beginning with World of Warcraft Vanilla. Vanilla. Good old vanilla. So, coming off the heels of things like RuneScape, Ultima, all those old MMOs from back then, even Final Fantasy XI predates World of Warcraft. Warcraft, as far as an RTS series, have been going for a little while here. And so, the hype was real. The beta tests, the alpha, all that, the hype was real. And when Vanilla dropped, it was one of the biggest, hardest drops in that entire genre. Lord knows did it have some problems. Good Lord. Which you have to excuse because it was the early days. It was their early days, and they were also, at the time, a very small dev team. But the things they pulled off with that very small dev team were quite magnificent. One man was able to create the entirety of Molten Core, I think it was like within a week, something like that. You had some of the most extensive quest lines that had been kind of seen in an MMO at the time, and it really drew in just the environment, the lore. It made your character matter, and it really, really exemplified the whole classic thing of like a journey of an adventurer, a nobody, into a hero. From humble beginnings, whether that might have been in Death Knell or in Stormwind, you know, all the or down in you know, over in Kalimdor, you know, or Night Elves, you know, super humble beginnings into this grand epic journey. Because that was the beauty of classic vanilla World of Warcraft. The beauty was the journey. Molten Core was like just epic. And it was such a classic thing too, you know, such a great trope of this evil entity in this evil mountain, you know. And the build-up to Molten Core was unlike anything. Then it flipped it on its head with the classic trope of slaying an evil dragon in a cave with Onyxia. And then they threw eldritch abominations at you with the Ankiraj raid in Cthulhu. And then to cap it all off with the entire classic experience, they ended with Naxxramas. Unfortunately, a raid not many got to see because it was very close to the next expansion, which I will talk about in a moment. It had things you would remember, like you remember that the class quests, or the class had quests that expanded upon their fantasy and their lore. Everybody from rogues to warriors to mages, and especially warlocks, had specific quests that gave you new tools, new spells, and in some cases, like with the warrior, weapons. Special weapons that you would hold on to for a very long time. And one thing that many people, one of the biggest things many people remember about World of Warcraft Vanilla, they remembered how just absolutely dangerous Azeroth was. Just completely and utterly dangerous. And that was by design. They wanted the world to feel not just huge, they wanted it to feel dangerous. And you couldn't just recklessly pull, you know, really sometimes more than 2 mobs. A lot of times, especially in the earlier stages, if you pulled more than 2 mobs, you were dead. It was a kill, especially if you were a Clothy. But even if you were a warrior. Some people's leveling experiences differed. Some classes had it easier than most. For example, warlocks, they had an easier leveling experience, and that was strictly because they had a minion with them. Hunters had an easier job because they had a pet. Even Frost mages, or just mages as a whole, had an easier time because of Frostbolt. You had classes that had a little bit more of a challenge to their leveling experience in their journey, like rogues, priests, druids. And then you had classes like, the warrior, who probably had the hardest time out of everyone. Because warriors had no self-healing at the time. They were very, very bare bones. But people remember that so much about Classic. That being said, and again, it is a product of its time, and they were still very much figuring out the game. You could say what I'm about to say next is very much kind of an iconic thing about vanilla, but it was a thing. There was no such thing as class balance in World of Warcraft vanilla. Even with the final patch, the game still was not balanced. True, when they released Classic later on, we were smarter then. Half the challenges we faced were just simply because we just didn't know what we were doing back in the day. And while we may be smarter now, by the time that Classic got re-released, even then, knowledge doesn't always overcome the fact that just some classes will never be on par with others in this iteration of the game. For example, Retribution Paladins, one of the worst DPS in the game. And it's simply just because they didn't have the tools needed to do it. Tank prop Paladins. Good for mobs, maybe? But against a boss or raid boss? No. Holy Paladins, decent healers if you knew what you were doing. But in the old days, their main appeal was raid buffs. The best tank in the game were warriors. None compared to them when it came to their role. Holy priests, they were the best healers in the game. True, you could roll restoration shamans or even have a restoration druid in there as well, but nothing compared to the holy priests. Plus, yes, War Tank was the only class with taunt. That's correct. When it came to raw DPS, nothing beat a combat rogue. Just absolutely nothing beat a combat rogue, except maybe in the old days, in the first iteration when Molten Core was around, Frost Mages were especially lethal. The main purpose of a Warlock back in the old days was to apply debuffs. As the game did evolve, by the time of Ankiraj, you did start to see some growth with some things. For example, Fire Mages became especially good during the Ankiraj years. Time. And even then, by the time of Nox Ramus, people had really kind of started to figure stuff out. But these staples were still very much in place. So while it didn't maybe not have offered the freedom that we had hoped for, it still holds up a lot to this day. And the reason I know this is because people are still playing Classic to this day. Because they just absolutely love that version. No matter how many times they've gone through it. It's one of those things where it's kind of like with old school games. Sometimes it's okay to take that journey over and over and over and over and over again. It did. And it didn't just, like Awkward Parakeet said in the chat, define nerd culture when it came out. It was one of those rare games that was a game changer. Not just in video games, but in pop culture as a whole. It was everywhere. I think really the last time that happened, something like this happened prior to that, might have been Halo, maybe coming up with Halo 2. Pokemon was another one. It was a game changer that influenced nerd culture, game culture, pop culture, you name it. World of Warcraft was everywhere. And it was a success. And that's why, just for its lasting impact, even with the bullshit, just for its lasting impact that it's had, not just on the franchise as a whole, but on the gaming industry and pop culture as a whole, I have to give Vanilla an S. Because out of all of them, none of the other expansions just did what this one did. It was the groundwork for what was to come. And even with the struggles, the bugs, the crashes, and the imbalance of the classes, you have to kind of love it for what it is. Because it is what it is. It's classic World of Warcraft. The Burning Crusade. In many ways, Burning Crusade could be regarded as like classic, but better. You could even call it almost maybe a classic plus in a lot of ways, because it took everything that made classic good, or vanilla good. I need to quit calling it classic. It took everything that made vanilla good and built upon it. You had two new races in the Draenor and the Blood Elves, the latter that I'm particularly a fan of. You know, I'm not saying I think the Blood Elves are awesome. I'm saying I did get a model made of my character that I have had since the very near beginning. So, I'm just saying, the Blood Elves are a beloved race for a reason. One of the most popular races in the game. They expanded on a threat that we had not heard from really since Warcraft 3, and that is the Burning Legion. And while Vanilla had memorable raids like Molten Core, Ahn'Qiraj, Naxxramas, Onyxia, they were in a lot of ways, in some ways, very bare bones in design, which is understandable. They were just getting started. And that's not to say that they're not memorable. But when it comes to the raids of the Burning Crusade, in my humble opinion, you have some of the best raids, not just at the time. To this day, some of the best raids that have ever happened in the game. The Black Temple. Epic. Sunwell. An epic conclusion. Some people may not have been a fan of it, but in my humble opinion, the Sunwell was a better end of expansion raid than, say, Naxxramas. And to this day, what many people still consider one of the best raids that ever hit the game in Karazhan. Yes, I know Serpent Shrine Cavern was another one. And that one was okay. Karazhan was something different, though. The scope and scale of Karazhan was like nothing we had ever seen before. Starts off as this old, dilapidated mansion tower, you know, haunted with ghosts and zombies and magic. And then it gets interdimensional, stepping into the Nether. And the Burning Legion coming into the forefront of it. Man. And then you had your, and then you had your one-offs like Gruul. That's right. And Magtheridon and all them. Yeah. You had really good single boss encounters. You really did. The big thing that Burning Crusade introduced was flight mounts. And it really worked to Burning Crusade's advantage because it encouraged you to fly. Because the map of Outland was just kind of built around it. There was some good vertical scaling that happened with Outland, and they expanded on that later with later expansions. You had really good world PvP. And of course, there's memorable moments like, the Fel Reaver sneaking up on you with that memorable, roar that it would let out and then just one-shotting you. You had really great dungeons like Hellfire Citadel and, the ones with the Sethrak, the Underbog. You know, you had really good dungeons like that. You know, Hellfire Ramparts, just really, really good dungeons. Magister's Terrace was another one, very memorable one. The class balance was expanded upon. Retribution Paladins were actually extremely good DPS, especially on the Horde side, and they were getting better. Holy Paladins were kind of starting to come into their own. Shamans and Druids were becoming more competent as healers. Warlocks became a one-button press class with Shadow Bolt. And then Rogues didn't evolve a whole lot, but we did get Cloak of Shadows, which was nice. And so, really, I really think the biggest flaw, though, however, with Burning Crusade, I would have to say probably the only flaw. Yes, Zulaman. Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, Zulaman. With its, you know, time attack thing they had in there for the mount. Yeah, Zulaman. Another fantastic raid. I think really the only flaw I would have to say with the Burning Crusade is... I really can't think of one. It's like I said, Burning Crusade in a lot of ways, I really felt was classic, but better, you know? And of course, for me personally, this was where I started with World of Warcraft. The attunement. Okay, I will say maybe the attunement stuff might have been a negative, but some people liked it because it gave you stuff to do. So kind of a contested, you know, divided subject there. Was the attunement stuff good? Was the attunement stuff bad? Some people didn't like it because it was a lot. It was like a lot. Some people did like it because it just gave them stuff to do, you know? You did. You did like it. I liked helping people through it and knowing all the steps. Yeah. Was there also that pandemic because that was the debuff they forgot to fix? No. That was Noxtramus. But anywho. So personally, but like I said, for personally, this was where I started with World of Warcraft. So yeah, I'm a TBC baby. But I will tell you, some people will say some of their fondest memories was walking up on Orgrimmar or walking up to Stormwind. For me, it was walking into Eversong Woods for the first time. That's one of those just core memories I'll never forget. And so really, I have to put the Burning Crusade up here in S tier as well. It was just, it was so good. And such a great expansion added on to Vanilla. Now we come to the one... Now we come to this one right here. One of the most memorable ones. Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath of the Lich King. The epic conclusion to a story that began in Warcraft 3 with Arthas. We're off to Northrend to face the Scourge head on. As far as class balancing in this was concerned, Holy Paladins were now awesome. Prop Paladins could now properly tank. Druids became really good. Rogues could finally stop maining combat and it could actually go assassination, especially once we got into the final patch. Mages, still good. Warlocks, they were okay. Priests, especially Shadow Priests, were really good. Building off of what they gained in TBC. And then, of course, the introduction of the hero class of Death Knight. Yeah, Survival Hunter took off, that's right. Yes, and again, he's up, chat. I'm not going to go over everything, I'm just highlighting everything, so. And like I said, the introduction of the hero class of Death Knight. Was it broken? Yeah. Yeah. And we loved it. We didn't care. Of the rumors of how to become a Death Knight? Oh, yes. So many rumors circling about. Now, where people get divided about Wrath, some people will say this is where a lot of the problems that would plague World of Warcraft in the future started. And there is some truth to that, as far as design and also just how things were kind of laid out. For example, not everyone was a fan of the fact that the Nox Ramus that got brought back in this was basically a copy-paste of the original. Not everybody was a fan of that. The Rise of Gearscourt, that was another one. Some people were not a fan of the looking for group thing that got introduced in Wrath. I didn't mind it so much, personally. I thought it was okay. But they did start to look at, when gear scores started to become a thing, that did start to impact groups. Because you could have a monumental gear score, you may not know what the hell you're doing. But as far as the raids themselves, as I said, not everybody was a fan that Nox Ramus was a copy-paste. I personally didn't mind it because, again, not a lot of people got to experience the original Nox Ramus. I never did. So I got to experience Nox Ramus for the first time. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. But some people are gatekeepers, and that's okay. Then you also had, you know, the stuff with the blue Dragonflight and whatnot, where you mounted on top of dragons and did, you know, all that. Not everybody liked that one either. But then Ulduar happened. And there is an argument to be made. That Ulduar might, to this day, be one of the best raids ever made. There is an argument to be made about that. It's one of the few raids from beginning to end. Not only was it just perfectly designed, it offered a really good range of challenge. Because with it, you had 10-man and 25-man. And you got to kind of choose what you wanted to do. And I thought that was perfect. I thought that was fine. That was perfectly fine. In many ways, I thought maybe you should just stick to that. Yes, and Ulduar's optional hard modes, yes. Yes, indeed. And of course, the big showdown with Yogg-Saron. It's hard to top a raid like Ulduar. And then came along Trial of the Crusader. Not everybody liked that one. Not everybody liked that one. In many ways, people just kind of wanted them to get it over with. I thought it was an okay thing for like a catch-up mechanic for what it was. I personally liked Trial of the Crusader. It wasn't like the hardest thing, but many in the fan base were not a fan of it just because of what it was. But that didn't matter because at the very end, Icecrown opened up. Some would argue that Icecrown Citadel might be the greatest raid of all time. I don't think it is the greatest raid of all time, but it is definitely in the top 5, I would say. Not necessarily for its mechanics, but for what it meant, narratively speaking. This was the big thing we had waited for. It was the big build-up to everything. And I still do believe that in that regard, it did not disappoint. It didn't. I really feel like it didn't. Yeah, some people felt like, oh, well, you know, they made Tyrion the main character and everything, but I think it was fine. The airship battle, the Blood Queen, Syndragosa, and of course the showdown with Arthas at the very end. It was a hard fight too. Arthas was no picnic. He certainly in a lot of ways, I think, lived up to the hype. Yes, good news, everyone. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I do think Arthas lived up to the hype a lot. To this day, people still farm him for Invincible. So I would definitely say Icecrown Citadel is in definitely the top 5. Maybe the top 5, definitely the top 10 raids of all time. What I do want to speak about as well, Tyrion had to res this. Well, not even Tyrion resed us. The ghost of Arthas' father did. This was also one of the big things with Wrath, was the introduction of cinematics. Not just, you know, the trailer cinematics. Expansion cinematics, and even cinematics in-game. Like Wrathgate. Or the very end, when Arthas fell. It was really, really good. Or the Ulduar cinematic. Very good. Very, very good. Good stuff. Good stuff. And even when you made a Death Knight, the whole opening area of the Scarlet Enclave with the Death Knight leading up to when they finally break away from Arthas. Just epic. Now, this was also the expansion that some people will say this is where the problem started. There was like a looking for group option in Burning Crusade, but it wasn't the one that you know of today. No. That version that you know today happened in Wrath. And on the flip side, it did give you people to play the game with. But on the other hand, it also threw a bunch of people that had never seen each other before suddenly mishmashed together. Because in the old days, when doing a dungeon, you either had to be in a guild and communicate with other players. It forced communication. That was the other one of the great things about vanilla and TBC. You wanted to do a dungeon or raid, you had to communicate, like literally communicate. You couldn't just hit a button and pop into a group. You had to communicate. It helped when you were in a guild, which is why guilds were encouraged. Wrath didn't do that with the dungeons. If you wanted to do the raids, you still had to communicate. But when it came to the dungeons, you could do boop. Same thing with the heroic version of dungeons, which, by the way, heroic dungeons were introduced in TBC. That was another great thing about TBC. Same thing with the heroic versions of these dungeons. Boop. In you go. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? I usually had people to play with, so it didn't really bother me. Some people still didn't like it, though. Because it did suddenly, like I said, it was a big thing that just suddenly threw a bunch of people together. Necessary evil? Subjective. That's a subjective thing. Who knows? Someday, to this day, some people don't like it. To this day, some people still don't like that feature. And they think you should communicate with other players. But that is not my place to say they are wrong, because, again, something like that is merely subjective. Didn't bother me, really. So I didn't really care. They also introduced heroic raiding with Icecrown Citadel. Some people didn't like that in particular because they thought the 10 and 25 man options were fine. They thought that was fine. I am actually one of those that think 10 man and 25 man was fine. But they wanted to tack on another mode. Just for the sake of keeping players engaged with the game. Is that good or bad? It's up to you to decide. But as far as its impact, and this is kind of where I might disappoint you. Was Wrath a good expansion overall? I think so. Do I think it mattered in the scale of everything? Yes. Do I think its impact was everlasting? Yes. For good and bad. Because I do think some of the problems that would plague the design of later expansions, I do believe that some of that started here. With their choices of raid design and other stuff. Do I think it deserves to be S tier alongside Vanilla and TBC? No. On the grounds of two things. I personally felt that I liked the idea of a class mattering at that point in time. Because when it came to raids, it mattered what you brought. It mattered. The class you brought mattered. And that was by design. In some ways. With Wrath, some people may say bring the player, not the class was fine. But I do think it diminished certain classes at their importance. As I said, Death Knights broke the game. Completely broke the game. That's why there were so many damn Death Knights everywhere. You know? You could have been a fantastic rogue in TBC. Why bring one when a Death Knight can outdo you? So the introduction of a hero class, which the game needed more classes. So the introduction, but I do think the introduction of a hero class was also a good, but also maybe not a good thing. Are Death Knights fine now? Sure. Death Knights are fine now because they've had time to, you know, work things out, work kinks out. I also felt that the world of Azeroth and Outland was more dangerous than Northrend. Northrend, I never really felt like I was in danger. So I do think they softened up a lot on the world exploration and the world being dangerous. Even when you were leveling a new character, let's say in Tears Fall or even in Eversong, the world wasn't quite as dangerous anymore. They definitely nerfed a lot of the outdoor mobs and stuff like that at this time. Yeah, it was the first expansion where you could chain pull AoE dungeons, exactly. Now, does this make Wrath a bad expansion? Absolutely not. It is solidly a top A. It is still a great expansion. It is still up there with the elite. I just think Vanilla and TBC were a little bit better. Cataclysm. This was when they reset everything. The entire map of Azeroth, from Kalimdor to the Eastern Kingdoms, all got updated. And I liked that. I liked that. I personally, some people did not like the sound of that. They did not like that. I felt it was okay to do that because, I thought it was bold. I thought it was a bold thing to do. And it was cool to see the passage of time within the world because I really felt like that made the world more alive. So I didn't mind that. On the other hand, no, I'll get to the on the other hand in a minute. Quest lines were updated. Some of them just updated versions of quests that were already there, which I thought was fine. But then not only were zones updated, some of their entire quest chains were completely erased. For example, the quest chain that is in Silver Pine Forest in Cataclysm was not the same one that was in Vanilla or TBC. It was completely different. In the old one, you had Silver Pine Forest as this spooky woods with werewolves. Sure, the Worgen were still there in Cataclysm, but the forefront of the quest chain was the Forsaken versus Gilneas, which, by the way, 2 new races added to the game with the Goblins and the Worgen. So that kind of roped them into things. Were quest rewards improved in Cataclysm? Absolutely, I would think so. Plus, the quest lines were more story-driven. Look at Silver Pine Forest and all that entire quest line with Sylvanas, present for so much of it. A lot of quest lines and zones were very story-driven. There was a plot going on. It wasn't just a bunch of fetch quests, maybe go kill an elite mob, go take this thing from this fortress and whatnot. There's a lot more plot-driven stuff, which I thought was a good thing. Because I wanted to see what happened next, I wanted to see this. That being said, the only thing I didn't like about Cataclysm's world revamp was how long it stuck around. And even to this day, much of Azeroth is still Cataclysm Azeroth. The Silver Pine Forest that you see, if you were to go into retail WoW right now, is the one from Cataclysm. That is how long, since 2010? Yeah, 2010, something like that. That is how long ago this update happened. It's also how long ago much of this world update has stuck around. Personally, I thought that by now, the whole of Azeroth should have gotten another update by this point. That was my only problem with the world revamp. As far as dungeons and raids were concerned, dungeons were hard again. They were very hard. Even the heroic versions of Cataclysm dungeons, some would even say that some of these felt impossible to do. And a lot of that did have to do with the fact that, so much of this was overtuned at the beginning. But even later in the expansion, they were still hard. You had to pay attention, especially in heroic Cataclysm dungeons. They were hard. They were hard. The raids. I personally felt like the raid, that was with the Twilight guys. It was alright. It was alright. It was alright. Firelands. Firelands is one of those raids that I consider to be in the top 10 of greatest raids of all time. It literally felt like a world within a world. It was the scope and scale, the magnitude, the look of it. Firelands was like nothing we had ever seen before. Probably the closest, I would say by comparison, as far as the scope and scale of Firelands was definitely probably Karazhan. Yes, even the questing area you got with that absolutely was amazing. Absolutely. Plus, you could actually quest in Azara finally. Couldn't do that in vanilla. There were no quests in Azara. Not everybody was a fan of the final raid against Deathwing. I thought the stuff you did on his back was pretty neat, albeit a bit repetitive. And even the final showdown, I do think a lot was left to be desired. And then, of course, yes, we have Ragnaros' chicken feet, which I thought killed a lot of his mystique, and I think killed a lot of his image. I'm sorry, but when I saw Ragnaros' feet, I was like, you look ridiculous. I was like, dude, you look ridiculous. Oh, my God. Oh, my Lord. You look ridiculous. I didn't think that was necessary. Were the goblins and the Worgen pretty cool? I would think so. I think so. Warriors, especially arms warriors, got screwed. And it did give rogues something pretty cool with the Fangs of the Father questline. It was really cool. It took a while, but it was cool. The Druid staff, you know, the staff quest line I thought was really cool. Class balancing kind of was all over the place, though, in Cataclysm. Do I think it was a bad expansion? No. But I do think it had longer-lasting effects that, to this day, are still kind of negatively felt. Especially, like I said, with the world revamp. In my opinion, like I said, the biggest thing they can do with WoW right now, the biggest thing, is revamp the entire world. Like as far as Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms are concerned, those places need updates because there's still so many of them are still stuck in Cataclysm. But do I think Cataclysm is a bad expansion? No. I would make it a solid B. It was still good. There was good things in Cataclysm. There was. This is where I get controversial. Mists of Pandaria. Mist of Pandaria. Good Lord. Good Lord. Pandas? Yeah. That was the response. That was the response. So many basement nerds. So many men. Well, I use that term loosely. Men that had probably never touched a woman were bitching and moaning about Pandaren. Now, I know they were in the lore already. I get all that. But you listen to me. Did Mist of Pandaria have its problems with that really long period of time where it was just the Timeless Isle and there wasn't a lot going on near the very end there? Yeah. It was a lot. But let me tell you why it's here. Heart of Fear. Amazing raid. Mogashun Vaults. Amazing raid. Siege of Orgrimmar. In the top 5 of greatest raids of all time. Killer dungeons. Great class balancing. You know, a bunch of classes got a bunch of new shit that we needed. Especially Destruction Warlocks. They were fun. Rogues were fun again. It was great to War Tank again. Even, Throne of Thunder. Hang on. Yeah, guys, chat, I really need y'all to chill out on the back seating, okay? I'm getting to things, okay? Like, let me process my thoughts here, okay? Please don't correct me, okay? I got it, okay? Just ease up. Ease off the gas, please. You had just this amazing world the entirety of the island of Pandaria. So big and so expansive. Great story quest lines that were just scattered throughout. Really diving into the lore of not just the Pandaren, but the whole Alliance versus Horde conflict going on. And it led up to the Mogu'shan Vaults raid, which that was the time that was going on. That was one of the big threats, was not just the Shah, but the stuff that was going on with the Mogu'shan. The Mogu. Then you get in there with the Calaxy. The Mantid. My God, they were so fucking cool. My God, they were so fucking cool. I loved Heart of Fear. I know some people are like, bugs. I'm sorry. Heart of Fear was amazing. Fucking amazing raid. Then the Blood Elves got to take center stage with the Isle of Thunder patch. The Isle of Thunder patch. Finally got to see Lor'thramar in action again. The conflict going on between the Blood Elves and the Silver Covenant. Because prior to all this, some really terrible war crimes happened. Like Garrosh blowing up Jaina's home in Kalimdor. Jaina imprisoning and killing Blood Elves in Dalaran. It was such great cold storytelling. Controversial actions, but it was good shit. It was such good shit. All of that coming to a head on the Isle of Thunder. Really good daily quest stuff that you could sink your teeth into. Really, really good shit. And it had a very good conclusion with the two sides about to go at it hard. And once again, it being the Pandaren to stop the fighting. And then the Throne of Thunder raid itself. Another one that's in the top 10, in my opinion. One of the few times that a secret hidden boss was hidden on the highest difficulty. Discovered by complete accident. Because you could still do that at the time. And then the big build up to Siege of Orgrimmar. Like I said, not just in the top 10, in my opinion, in the top 5 raids of all time. Easily top 5. Fighting the Shah. Fighting Goblin Engineer bullshit. Having a showdown with the Calaxy. Having a showdown with Nazgrim. And of course, the big fight with Garrosh. It was so fucking cool, man. Plus, you had the carrot on the stick with these really cool weapons you could get that were like your in-game weapons. If you killed him, you got these really, really cool, almost like artifact weapons in a way. You could even say that maybe they might have been a precursor to artifact weapons. But you got better variations of them if you did the harder difficulties. It was especially fun for me. And Khan, you were there for this. It was right before they introduced not just flex rating, but it was right before the mythic... Yes, heirlooms, thank you. It was right before they introduced mythic raids. It was right before this. Not me and Khan were there the final nights of the heroic tier raids. It was the first time that I had ever raid tanked on my warrior. And I went in there blind. Khan and I stayed on this thing with this complete group of strangers for hours. For hours we stayed in there. But it was the final night of the heroic tier, because after that they were going to add the new stuff. And I'll never forget it. Khan's over here on his hunter, just firing away. And in the very near end of the raid, with just a sliver of health left, there's people dropping left and right because we're just running out of resources at this point. And the moment, I'll never forget this because I was the off tank. The moment the main tank dropped, Garrosh turned around and faced one of the healers. And just without thinking, I intervened on the healer and hit shield wall and took the shot and snatched the threat. And the raid was able to kill him. It was one of those rare moments that would just like stuck with me forever, where I like physically jumped out of my seat and just, yeah! I mean, it was such an epic moment for me, and I'll never, ever forget it. I got my sword. Khan got his weapon as well. It was just one of those really, really great memories for me. Plus, with Mr. Pandaria, you had the introduction of, in my opinion, one of the coolest classes they ever added to the game with the monk. Tank, DPS, healing you can do with this. Still a great tank to this day. Still good DPS. Still one of the best healers in the game, in my humble opinion, with Mistweaver. And not only was it a cool addition to the game, so many races could be a monk. That was also the night I realized Hunter could pit the Robo-Scorpion as a pet. That's right, I remember that. So that, in my opinion, is why Mr. Pandaria deserves to be in the S tier. You may disagree, and that's fine. But after Cataclysm, Mr. Pandaria, in my opinion, was just wonderful. It was really just, it was wonderful. I loved it. I loved Mr. Pandaria. You know what's coming. Warlords of Draenor. Would you believe this sold actually extremely well? And the reason why was twofold. We had a World of Warcraft movie on the horizon, so the hype was real with WoW fans. Not to mention the cinematic for Warlords of Draenor. Even Khan, you can't deny that cinematic trailer for Warlords of Draenor was pretty fucking metal. It was pretty fucking metal. Yeah. Plus, we were going back to Outland. Even though it wasn't Outland, it was Draenor. We were gonna get to see Draenor in its prime. And then they pulled what I consider to be a cop-out. You see, I thought, oh, we're going to the past. Ooh, we're going to go to the past. We're going to do things there that could potentially fuck things up in the future and change things. Ooh, this is bold. That's not what happened. In my humble opinion, they played the safe route and went multiverse. And I went, ugh. Well, that's not nearly as cool. And this was before even Marvel and all these other places were just spamming multiverse crap everywhere. You know, this was before all that. When they said it was an alternate timeline, I was like, oh, come on. Come on. Really? Because in my head, I mean, I even theorized with Khan about this so much. I was like, dude, what if we go back to Draenor in the past and we end up killing Ner'zhul so that he never ever becomes the Lich King and all of that changes for the Blood Elves and things like that, you know? You know? I was like, dude, what if that happens? And then when we go back, like, our Azeroth and our time is like completely changed now. I was like, ooh, that would be so fucking cool if they actually had the balls to do that. They did not have the balls to do that, ladies and gentlemen. I am sad to announce that that never happened. It was an alternate timeline, and I personally was not a fan of it. The Garrison. To me, you may say, some people might say the release schedule of content and even the damn selfie patch was probably the biggest problem with Warlords of Draenor. I disagree. The selfie patch aside, that was just stupid. To me, the biggest problem with Warlords of Draenor was the Garrison. Not that the Garrison idea was bad, but how it was utilized. You never had to leave your Garrison. Once you got that bad boy completely upgraded, you never had to leave it. Exploring the world, going out into the world and doing things, no. Do your work orders, queue for raid. You never had to leave. You never, ever, 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 ever had to leave. And to me, that was one of the worst things they could have done to World of Warcraft, because they took the world out of the equation. They used it as an excuse for the longest time not to implement any kind of housing thing ever again, which I thought was ridiculous. Thankfully, that'll be remedied in midnight. Were there some good things about Warlords of Draenor? Sure. I thought the raids were pretty cool. I thought Hellfire, this version of Hellfire Citadel was pretty decent. But the fact that we had so many raids in prior expansions, and they were taking less and less, and they were taking more and more away. We now had less dungeons and less raids than any other prior expansion. And I'm like, why are they taking content out? That's stupid. That's so stupid. Plus the long gap of time that was there near the very end. We lost an entire zone, yes. And even then, a conclusion that still in many ways kind of fell flat on its face. You had record Wrath level player count at the very beginning of Warlords of Draenor. And then massive nosedive. The RP community was live and well. Massive nosedive on player count, though. People were leaving. It was boring. It was boring. People weren't happy with it. Heck, that's when Khan left. I stuck around, but yeah, that's when Khan left. You broke my heart, Khan, and I've missed you ever since. But I understand why you left. I don't blame him for leaving. I didn't blame any of my friends that were leaving. I didn't blame any of them. Didn't blame a single, solitary one of them. Why I stuck around, God only knows. So where do I rate Warlords of Draenor? Is it a bad expansion? Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. There's people that will try to make the argument of, is this the worst expansion? And of course, I'm lying. It is. To me, to this day, Warlords of Draenor, to me, to this day, is still probably one of the worst expansions. Simply based on the hype buildup, the content, just in my opinion, not being very good. And also, like I said, the Garrison killing half the game. Selfie patch. All that. Not a good time. To me, I will say one saving grace about Warlords of Draenor, and that was the PvP zone that was there. To me, that was the one really good thing about it. I thought it was actually pretty good. Yeah. That's it though. Now why am I putting Legion? Some people may say, "Oh, Legion was an S tier." Legion is an A tier. What keeps it from being an S tier with me? I'm going to get that out of the way right here at the very beginning. The one solitary thing, because everything else about Legion was great. Because God, we needed it after WoD. But the one thing that keeps Legion from being up there in the S tier is the goddamn legendaries. Whoever decided that legendaries should be an RNG drop from anything and everything, and also made it to where there were so many legendaries, we were swimming in legendaries. But if you didn't get specific ones, you were never going to hold pace with the folks that did. You were never going to keep pace with them. And what happened then? You didn't get to raid because you didn't have this one legendary because RNGesus decided to hate you for that day. Did you know I barely got to raid in Legion until the very end? Until the very end. I didn't get invited to any raids except for one normal tier of Emerald Nightmare. Yeah. It worked for Diablo 3 and Destiny. It did. It absolutely worked for that. But, like I said, with Diablo 3, though, it's a dungeon crawler, you know? When you're in an MMORPG that has raids, especially since we were so attuned in the head to gear score and things like that, again, if you were playing a certain class and you didn't have certain specific legendaries, you were never going to keep pace with performance. You just weren't. The legendaries were that vital. There was, I can't remember if it was like it was either a pair of shoulders or something, but there was a rogue piece that basically guaranteed you a 100% crit once you were coming out of stealth. That particular piece was so important to rogues. It was so important. If you didn't have it, you were never going to keep pace with DPS. You just weren't. Mantle of the Master Assassin. That's what it was. While stealth is active and for 5 seconds after breaking your stealth, your critical strike chances increase by 100%. I'm going to run that back to you again. After exiting stealth and for 5 seconds after exiting stealth, your crit was 100%. 5 seconds is a long time. If you didn't have that, fuck you. You weren't coming. I did not get the Mantle of the Master Assassin. I shit you not. I did not get Mantle of the Master Assassin until literally the day Legion ended. The literal last day of Legion was when I got it. And I was so fucking pissed. Yeah, salt in the wound. Yeah, salt in the fucking wound. Quest lines, story, dungeons, raids, world design, music, class design, the class halls, the class quests, Mage Tower. Every bit of that was fucking epic. So fucking epic. For me personally, I loved what they did to Subtlety. Subtlety rogues. They did so good with this in Legion. They did so good with it. Plus, you have the introduction of what I consider to actually be a better hero class than Death Knights. Demon Hunters. They were so fucking cool. Demon Hunters was so fucking cool, man. They still are. Plus, it was one that we wanted. Plus, Illidan was back, and everybody loves Illidan. You know? Everybody loves Illidan. We got to see, the planet where the Draenor came from. We got two new allied races. And some people may think, that might have been a cop-out. You know, like Lightforged Draenor not being all that. I think Lightforged Draenor are okay. You know? And then we got Void Elves, and yeah! I love my Void shit, so with the introduction of the Void Elves, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Hell yeah. I loved the Void Elves. Still do. Yes, and the High Mountain Tauren, and, oh god, and the Nightborn, and, I believe also the Draenor orcs as well. Yeah. Yeah, seeing Sargeras finally for the first time. Yeah. Yeah, Legion had a lot to offer. And for what it had to offer, the legendary bullshit aside, for what Legion had to offer, I think it offered so fucking much. And it was so fucking good. That's why I think Legion is definitely an A. In fact, I would actually rank Legion above Wrath of the Lich King. How many of you found me because of this motherfucker right here? How many of you found me because of Battle for fucking Azeroth? Batista3218, thank you for the follow, man. How many of you motherfuckers found me because of Battle for fucking Azeroth? If you're watching this channel on YouTube right now, I would say a big chunk of you. I'm going to talk to y'all about Battle for Azeroth. I'm really going to talk to you about it. I have been all over the fucking place with BFA. First of all, the hype was real. The hype was fucking real. It was. It was fucking real. Good fucking God. Whew. Good fucking God. Controversy was the name of the game. The burning of Teldrassil. Woo, did people get mad? Ooh, they were fucking mad. There was actually a giant horde exodus on many servers, especially on Wormrest Accord, because they felt like they were just trying to make the horde into the bad guys. That begs the question now. Was BFA good? I was all down for Alliance versus Horde being the forefront. I was down for that shit. I was down for that shit. I wanted to see, was very interested what they were doing with Sylvanas. I was like, something's going on with Sylvanas. What's going on here? I thought that between the Horde and the Alliance, I felt the Alliance had the cooler zone, but I didn't think Zandalar was a bad zone. Not at all. I just thought it was cool. It was cool to see Zandalari. It was really cool to see the Zandalari. But Borealis was cool too. It was. Let me tell you about that first raid. Uldir. Ass. What a shit raid. What an absolute shit raid. Uldir was ass. Gahoon. Oh, God. And the first thing I said was like, what does this have to do with Alliance versus Horde? The test tube baby old god? Why do I fucking care? Man, fuck this. But they made up for it in the Battle for Dazar'alor. Another raid that I feel is in the top 10 raids of all time. I do think they made up for it with that. I thought the Battle of Dazar'alor, like, I'm like, ooh, more of this. Raids that are story-driven, more of it, and you can see both sides' perceptions. I was like, yes, more of this. More of this. This is what I'm fucking talking about. More of this. And then they never did that again. And I'm like, missed opportunity. Let me tell you about N'Zoth. Was I mad that N'Zoth showed up? I know I just called him N'Zoth, and some people are going to be like, N'Zoth. Was I mad that N'Zoth showed up? Not in particular, because of where I thought it might have been going at the time. I thought, is N'Zoth pulling the strings here? Is he manipulating Sylvanas and was the cause of all of this? Did the Twilight's hammer or someone frame Sylvanas for the burning of the tree and get involved in all? Was there shit going on here? Nope. Had nothing to do with Sylvanas. Had nothing to do with it. Now, was the Ny'alotha raid actually pretty cool? Yes. But oh my fucking god, those mechanics on N'Zoth. What the actual fuck was that raid? What the actual fuck was that raid, boss? I'm like, okay, what the fuck am I doing here? Do I need to do a backflip and turn inside out while doing my fucking rotation with this fucking raid? What is this shit? God damn. And I agree with Olgabel. I do think Ny'alotha should have been a zone, not reduced to a raid. And then N'Zoth was killed by the super mega Azerite piss laser. And then died like a bitch in the same way that Sauron died in Lord of the fucking Rings. You know what I do think was a good raid, though? Ajara's raid was actually pretty good. But that zone. Some of you were here that night it happened. New patch dropped. We arrive in the new underwater zone. Because we're dealing with Ajara now. We get there. I get 10 minutes into the new zone, and I just stopped. I just stopped. I stared at the screen, and I just went, and I said to the chat, y'all, this isn't fun. And that was the first time in a very, very long time that I finally just said, no, I don't want to play WoW. That was only the second time that I had ever unsubbed from WoW. The first time was back in WoD because I just needed to take a break. But when I unsubbed during that time, I didn't resub for months. Probably close to a year. I did not resub to WoW. I came back for the very end because I wanted to see N'Zoth. It disappointed me so bad as far as the content of this was concerned. Now let me tell you the good shit about Battle for Azeroth. The overarching story with Sylvanas, Sourfang, Anduin, all of that, Jaina, all of that were my favorite parts. Everything with Sourfang, because Sourfang is my boy. Rest and cleave, motherfucker. All of that. I loved every single bit of it. I loved every single bit of that. I loved every single bit of that. With Sourfang and Sylvanas. And Anduin and Jaina. I did. I loved it. I loved it. I love it. Those were my favorite parts of BFA. And that was about it. Now, do I think BFA is a bad expansion? I think BFA, in my humble opinion, I would put it at a C. Not the worst thing. There were some good things. There were. It had its good moments. It really did. You know, gave us the Volpira. Gave us the Zandalari trolls. I still think we should have gotten the snake folks. I still think we should have gotten those. The fact that we didn't get those was just fucking weird. Instead, they gave us mechanomes, and I'm like, who the fuck asked for fucking mechanomes? The race with the least amount of customization out of fucking everybody. And Volpira? You know, I've given Volpira a lot of shit over the years, but they're okay. They're okay. I've given them a lot of shit over the years. Looking back, they're okay. Not the worst thing. No, I think the worst race added to World of Warcraft was the fucking mechanomes. Yeah, Fox folks are cool. Well, see, Horde should have gotten Fox folks. Alliance should have gotten Snake folks. Mechanomes are the mechanomes we had at home and when we wanted to get real mechanomes. Exactly! I didn't want cyborg gnomes. I wanted robot gnomes. Ogomel, I think you and Manny would agree with me. When I think of a mechanome, I'm like, give me a fucking robot gnome. God damn it. Give me a fucking robot. Yeah, instead we got the mecha diaper babies. That is exactly what we got. We got the mecha diaper babies. We really fucking did. And I'm like, that's dumb. Yeah, like the Ulduar robot gnomes. That's a mecha gnome. Not whatever the fuck these diaper baby things are, you know? And yeah, we got the Dark Irons, which is cool. I do think it's just a lot of missed opportunities in BFA. I leveled a gnome warrior with a diaper from that onesie costume from BlizzCon just to get that achievement. Nice. I wouldn't even be okay with a leper gnome. Yeah, really. So, even with its good things, I still think the bad outweighed the good in BFA. We got to talk about this one. We got to talk about this one. Okay. Do we really? Yes, we do. Because I'm going to say something that might surprise you. Besides people quoting my hashtag handsome squibber nipple monster that I coin phrased, I'm going to say something that might surprise you. I actually don't consider it the worst. Did people leave because of this fucking game? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they fucking did. Was the jailer and the retconning of so much lore such a just ridiculous thing? Yes. And also just the complete character assassination of Sylvanas? Yes. Was the tour through Disney World at the very beginning of it, all the zones, was just a very stupid thing to do? Was Torghast just very poorly implemented, but then later fixed? Yeah. That's why I'm actually putting Shadowlands in D. Because whereas I think Warlords of Draenor was damned and doomed from the beginning, I do feel that there are good things in Shadowlands. I know! Good things in Shadowlands. Hear me out. You can't deny those zones were fucking awesome. You can't deny this. You cannot fucking deny this. And I don't want to hear anybody. I've already heard it 1,000 times. I don't want to hear Vampire Daddy should have been the main boss. Daddy Denathrius. Listen, I've heard it 1,000 times. I don't want to hear that right now. That's not what we're talking about. What has happened has happened. Now we must live with it. Okay? What has happened has happened. We must live with it. I don't want to hear Denathrius should have been the main bad guy. Y'all, I've heard it 1,000 times. Please drop it. Okay? Except for Bastion, because that one made you rage quit for a couple of months. It sure did. It sure fucking did. It sure fucking did. But man, Ardenweald was cool. Revendreth was cool. Oh, God, what was the one? What was the one with the zombies? Maldraxxus. Yeah, the Necrolord zone was fucking metal as shit. I actually liked the design of them all. I actually thought it was pretty cool. The time-gated shit with it I thought was pretty dumb. Because we were just living in a time period where that was such a popular thing in games, was to time gate shit. And just at the very beginning, my God, they implemented Torghast just very, very poorly. They fixed it later, but the one that they showed in the beta was not the same that was released on full release, and it was just awful. It was awful. It was so fucking awful. I hated the whole crafting a legendary thing. I was like, what are we doing? Why can't y'all just go back to doing legendaries how they used to fucking be? Come on, man. Like, what is this bullshit? Don't get me started on the Burger King crown. We've been there. We've talked about it. Yeah. Let's not, but we do need to talk about Thrall's axe shopping adventures. Too much heft, not enough shaft. Yeah. Don't get me started on the jailer. Don't get me started on the fucking jailer. Unfortunately, y'all, he's canon, and we have to live with that. Although, in the current expansion and going forward into Midnight, they do seem to be rewriting and just getting rid of a lot of shit, which is a good thing. Now, let me talk to you about those raids. He has nice nips. He had that going for him. Bane sitting on his ass the entire expansion, yes. World of Warcraft was not in a good place with Shadowlands. No doubt. But let me tell you about those raids. Ooh, Castle Nathria was so fucking cool. Castle Nathria was so fucking cool, man. It was so fucking cool, man. Oh, it was so fucking cool. If you were a Castlevania fan, you were right at home. I'll even say the raid where Sylvanas was the end boss was really fucking cool. Because as much as I hated like the maw powers and stuff like that, and that you got in Torghast, I thought it was actually kind of cool how they implemented some of that in that raid. I actually thought it was pretty cool. Not gonna lie. And I have to say, the final raid against the jailer was actually pretty good. He actually was a pretty good boss fight. I have to give him that. He was actually a pretty cool boss fight. He really was. I was not disappointed. As disappointed as I was with BFA and as vastly disappointed as I was with Shadowlands, the jailer actually turned out to be a really cool boss fight. I'm like, how did you pull that off? What the actual fuck? And then, of course, the implementation of things like the Catalyst. Now, does this take Shadowlands out of D tier? Well, then it comes into a subjective thing there. Does making your expansion actually good? And yes, I have to say it, guys and girls, by the end of Shadowlands, it was actually good. Like, Shadowlands actually was good at the end. But it was 2 years of frustration and bad design with just 2 good raids. That, unfortunately, and terrible storytelling. So, does an expansion actually ending on a good note take it out of D tier? I don't think so. And it didn't also help that all of this was going on while the Blizzard lawsuits, yes, the Blizzard lawsuits and everything IRL was going on. That did not help matters either. Plus COVID and everything else was happening. For a lot of people, Shadowlands drove people to Final Fantasy XIV. I was one of them. But does an expansion deserve to be in D tier even if it ended up being good in the end? Because I am of the opinion that when you release an expansion, you should hit the gas from the get-go. They did not do that with Shadowlands. They didn't. They immediately kneecapped you at the very beginning by taking you on a handheld stroll through Disneyland. And, oh, look at all these cool zones. Yeah, now get out. Oh, here's the next really cool zone. Now get out. It's like, I'm not exploring a world. I'm being taken on a tour at Disneyland. Whoever made that decision, fuck you. You know, really. So no. I do not think it is worse than Warlords of Draenor. I still, to this day, consider Warlords of Draenor to be the worst expansion. I do. Because, you see, expectations were not very high for Shadowlands at all. Plus, you had to go along with other outside controversies as well, not helping the Blizzard name at either. Plus, they had very good competition in Final Fantasy XIV. But Warlords of Draenor had all the hype. And then took a nosedive into the fucking shitter that is still felt to this day. So to me, that is the greater sin as far as what makes an expansion bad. Shadowlands, bad start, good ending. Warlords of Draenor, doomed from the beginning. Doomed from the beginning. So that's why Shadowlands is a D. Dragonflight. Things finally started to turn around when they were implementing very, very good things. Good raids. Good dungeons. Really cool zone with the Dragon Isles. 2 things added that I think were probably some of the best additions they ever gave World of Warcraft. It was dragon flying and also a better refined world quest system. That's what it was. Thank you. Not Delves. Delves came in the War Within. Thank you. A much better world quest system that they had been building on with, which was started in Legion. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was better here, and really probably one of its best forms that it took on at the time. No more daily world quests. Yeah, just I think that was a much better implementation of it. I really do. Plus you had world events happening and stuff like that. I thought the story with the dragons was really cool. Yeah, it was a really cool side quest too. Yeah, absolutely. You had stuff leading into the void shit. Yeah, no more borrowed power. That's right. No more borrowed power. A redoing of the talent system. Yes. Dragonflight's purpose was to be the palate cleanser. And in that regard, they did a good job. Now, is it A or S tier? No, but I would consider it a high B tier. That's a good thing. But we had a lot of shit we had to clean out, and not all the gunk was out. Not all the gunk was out with Dragonflight. It really, really wasn't. But you know what? Now that I think about it, I would actually maybe put it at the low end of A. I think I actually would put Dragonflight on the back end of A. We still had a lot of shit that had to get fixed. And it all wasn't completely fixed in Dragonflight, because to me, one of the biggest problems with World of Warcraft that was still plaguing it at the time was one big solitary problem. Same old shit. LFR, normal, heroic, mythic, PvP, dungeons, heroic dungeons. Same old shit. And while the War Within may not be on this list, that is where the War Within fixed everything with Delves. That, in my opinion, was the big game changer right there. Why? Because you gave casual players something else to do that could give them rewards on par with normal tier raid and sometimes even heroic. You gave players another method of entry into the harder content. I think the delve system, yes, an OBR, yes, I agree. I think the delve system to this day in the entirety of World of Warcraft, the delve system is one of the best additions to the entire franchise. And they never, ever, 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 ever need to get rid of them. Delves and the new flight system, those must be mainstays. Those are evergreen things that you can keep forever, because players will keep going back to them. Maybe not even for gear, but they'll need it for like upgrade materials and things like that. Or running something with friends. Or it's a great thing for alts. It's another way of leveling a character too. Delves have been one of the greatest additions that have ever happened to World of Warcraft. One of the greatest, if not probably the greatest. I think probably the only other thing that I would like put up there of like this is the best thing WoW ever added is probably flying mounts. And if not that, probably the class halls. Like it's up there with that stuff. Like delves are fucking amazing. Plus, while the War Within had a... Yes, war bands! Yes, thank you for the reminder. War bands. A wonderful way to do alts in the game. Just an absolutely wonderful way to do alts. Completely wonderful way to do alts. And while the War Within had a little bit of a slow start, it did. It was a little bit of a slow start. Once the Undermine dropped, they stepped on the gas. When they hit Undermine, they stepped on the gas. I mean, they stepped on the gas, and they stepped on the gas hard. Because the Undermine was so fucking cool. It was so fucking cool. You know, you got a car. The Goblin Raid was really good. Just all of the Undermine as a whole was such a cool-ass zone, you know? It really was. It was so fucking cool. And then you close it out now with everything going on in Kadesh. And probably what I consider definitely in the top 3 best raids of all time. Omega the Mana Forge Omega. I cannot sing this raid's praises enough. Great bosses, good challenge, not a lot of bullshit. Just fun bosses. Just really fun bosses that you can learn. And not a lot of bullshit. And Dimensius, in my opinion, definitely lived up to the hype. He really did. Dimensius lived up to the hype. He really did. Plus, the implementation of expansions not taking 2 years. Which is nice. Which was very nice. Thank God. Thank fucking God. So I know the War Within is not on this list. But personally, I would actually put... the War Within, I would actually put the War Within up there at the S tier, right behind Mr. Pandaria. That's where I would put it. Because to me, this was the turnaround World of Warcraft needed. This was it. This was it. Plus, they're doing just cool shit like Legion Remix. Just more ways to play the game. Just more ways. And there it is. And then we'll be getting Midnight not too long from now. But that is where I would rate the WoW expansions. Warlords of Draenor at the worst. Shadowlands at D. BFA at C. Cataclysm at B. Dragonflight, Wrath, and Legion at A. And the S tiers being Mr. Pandaria, Burning Crusade, and Vanilla, and the War Within. So you tell me in the comments where you would rank them. And if you disagree, well, that's okay. It's okay to be wrong.